Alright, sports fans. Today is one of those days where even if you're focused on one sport, the entire sports world is giving us some huge stories that are impossible to ignore. And honestly, the timing of both of these developments feels bigger than a lot of people realize. We've got two major NBA stories to talk about today. The first one involves a superstar player whose future has been surrounded by questions, rumors, uncertainty, and non-stop debate for what feels like forever. But now, something happened behind the scenes that may have finally given us the clearest answer yet about where things are heading. And the second story could completely shake up the NBA landscape before the draft even arrives. We're talking about trade rumors, superstar names, front offices making difficult decisions, and teams trying to position themselves for the future. The closer we get to the draft, the more intense things are becoming around the league. What's interesting is that both stories reveal something bigger than just transactions or roster moves. They show how organizations think, how franchises plan for the future, and how quickly things can change in professional sports. So today we're breaking down both developments, starting with the story that may have finally put an end to months of speculation, and then we'll dive into the latest trade market chaos that's starting to take over the NBA. Before we jump in, if you enjoy daily sports coverage and real conversations about the biggest stories happening right now, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The channel is still growing. We're pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and it would be awesome to have you here from the very beginning. Alright, let's start with the first story because this one is a huge development for Philadelphia 76ers fans. For months, maybe even longer, there has been a constant debate surrounding Joel Embiid. Every time he suffered another injury, every time the team struggled, every time the Sixers fell short of expectations, the same question kept coming back. Should Philadelphia eventually move on from Joel Embiid? It's a question that many fans didn't even want to hear because we're talking about the face of the franchise, a former NBA most valuable player, and one of the most dominant big men of his generation. But when a player has dealt with injuries as frequently as Embiid has, and when he's carrying a massive contract extension that is about to kick in, those conversations become unavoidable. Well, now we may have the clearest answer yet. The Sixers recently made significant changes in their front office structure. Jameer Nelson was promoted to team vice president, joining Mike Gansey as one of the key decision-makers helping shape the future of the organization. And when Nelson was asked about the team's plans moving forward and how they intend to build the roster this offseason, his response was incredibly revealing. Instead of talking about life after Embiid, instead of discussing contingency plans, instead of hinting at potential changes, Nelson made it clear that the organization's focus is getting Joel Embiid healthy and available as often as possible. He specifically said that the goal is to get Joel on the floor as much as they can, and then he went even further. Nelson called Embiid the best big man in basketball when healthy and emphasized that he's one of the players everybody wants when he's fully available. That's not the language of a front office preparing to trade its superstar. That's not the language of a franchise looking for an exit strategy. That's the language of an organization that still sees Joel Embiid as the foundation of everything. And honestly, that's probably the biggest takeaway here. The Sixers know exactly what Embiid is when healthy. We've seen it, the scoring, the defense, the ability to completely control a game on both ends of the floor. The problem has never been talent. The problem has always been availability. This past season was another frustrating reminder of that reality. Embiid missed more than half of the regular season because of injuries and load management concerns. Every time it seemed like he was gaining momentum, another setback appeared. But despite all of that, when he was on the court, he still looked like an MVP-caliber player. That's why Nelson's comments matter so much. They're essentially telling the fan base that the organization still believes its championship hopes are tied directly to Joel Embiid. And when you look at the contract situation, it makes even more sense. His extension hasn't even fully kicked in yet. His current deal could keep him in Philadelphia through the 2028 to 2029 season, depending on how his player option situation eventually plays out. There were people around the league who argued that this offseason might be Philadelphia's last realistic opportunity to trade him if they ever wanted to go in that direction. But based on these comments, that doesn't appear to be happening. At least right now, the Sixers seem fully committed to moving forward with Embiid as the centerpiece. And honestly, I understand both sides of the argument. On one hand, it's hard not to worry about the injuries. Those concerns are real. They're not going away. On the other hand, finding a player with Embiid'S talent level is almost impossible. Guys who can dominate games the way he does don't just grow on trees. So if you're Philadelphia, maybe the best strategy really is to double down, improve his conditioning, manage his health as carefully as possible, and build everything around him one more time. Now let's move to story number 2, because this one has the potential to reshape the entire NBA before the draft. The NBA draft is less than 2 weeks away, and according to league insiders, trade discussions are starting to heat up all across the league. One of the biggest names generating buzz is De'Aaron Fox of the San Antonio Spurs. After a disappointing performance during the Spurs' game 4 loss against the New York Knicks, some speculation began to emerge regarding his future. But league sources believe San Antonio is unlikely to move Fox immediately. Instead, the expectation is that if the Spurs eventually decide to move on from him, that conversation would likely happen closer to the trade deadline or potentially next summer. Then there's the massive Giannis Antetokounmpo situation. This remains one of the biggest stories in basketball. Teams are still monitoring Milwaukee's situation closely, and despite all the rumors, no deal appears imminent. The Boston Celtics continue to be mentioned in discussions involving Giannis, and here's where things get interesting. Around the league, the belief remains that if Boston ever seriously pursues Antetokounmpo, Jaylen Brown would almost certainly have to be included in the package. There are even suggestions that if Milwaukee acquired Brown, the Bucks might immediately explore sending him to a third team, with the Portland Trail Blazers being mentioned as a possible destination. At the same time, Boston has reportedly explored trade interest involving Sam Hauser as the organization looks for ways to maximize financial flexibility. Meanwhile, the Milwaukee Bucks are reportedly not enthusiastic about a potential package from the Miami Heat centered around Tyler Herro, Kelly Ware, draft picks, and role players. In fact, one Western Conference executive reportedly described such a return as something that would be extremely difficult to sell to the Bucks fan base. Then we have Kawhi Leonard and the Los Angeles Clippers. Publicly, the Clippers continue saying they aren't interested in trading Leonard. Privately, however, league chatter suggests they continue exploring possibilities. The franchise could decide to go younger by moving Leonard and adding assets alongside the 5th overall pick. Or they could move that draft selection itself in exchange for veteran help. The trade board doesn't stop there. Donovan Mitchell remains a name being discussed despite the Cleveland Cavaliers publicly insisting they want to keep their core together, including Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. Jaylen Brown continues to appear in rumors connected to Giannis scenarios. Jamal Murray's future with the Denver Nuggets is generating conversation because moving his contract could create flexibility around Nikola Jokic. Kevin Durant remains one of the most fascinating names on the market despite concerns some teams have regarding age and long-term fit. And yes, there are even whispers about a possible Golden State Warriors reunion. Among younger players, Trey Murphy of the New Orleans Pelicans remains highly coveted around the league. Evan Mobley's name continues to surface because of his value and contract situation. Franz Wagner is another player executives are monitoring as the Orlando Magic evaluate their long-term direction following coaching changes. And Zion Williamson remains one of the biggest wild cards in the NBA after averaging 21 points per game across 62 appearances. The bigger picture here is simple. The NBA is entering one of the most unpredictable off-seasons we've seen in years. Superstars are being discussed, contenders are evaluating dramatic changes, and the draft could become the trigger that starts a chain reaction across the entire league. When you combine that with the uncertainty surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox, and several other major names, you get an offseason where almost anything feels possible. And that's what makes this so fascinating to watch. As for the Sixers, today's biggest takeaway remains crystal clear. Joel Embiid is still the centerpiece. Jameer Nelson's comments sent a very strong message that Philadelphia isn't preparing for life without its superstar. Instead, the organization is betting that a healthy Embiid can still lead this team back into championship contention. Whether that gamble ultimately pays off remains to be seen. But right now, The front office appears fully committed to that vision. And honestly, the entire future of the franchise may depend on whether Joel Embiid can finally stay healthy when it matters most. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with the Sixers sticking with Joel Embiid? And which player do you think is most likely to be traded before the NBA draft? Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, De'Aaron Fox, or someone else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. The channel is still brand new. We're pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single person joining right now becomes part of this community from the very beginning. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.